Hi, I'm Alara. The day I got married, my father didn't give me away. It wasn't because he was running late or because he was unwell. It was because his wife, my stepmother, told him that if my wedding overshadowed her daughter's from 6 months prior, she would walk out on him. And he looked at me, his only child, and pleaded, "Don't make me choose." So he didn't. He simply turned and walked away. But what he didn't realize was that the story he abandoned was far from over. I always pictured this room in a different light. The bridal suite was filled with a soft glow, the only sound the faint birdsong from beyond the stained glass windows. My dress, a simple ivory gown, fit me better than I'd hoped. I stood before the full-length mirror, my hands shaking as I smoothed the fabric, but not because I was scared to marry Liam. He was my rock, my steady hand. My fear stemmed from the fact that I still hadn't seen my father. Not since the rehearsal dinner, when he'd stood to give a toast, only to stammer and raise his glass to Isla instead. His stepdaughter, my stepsister. The same one whose extravagant, overwhelming wedding had been just 6 months ago, and who still found a way to be the center of every room. But this day was meant to be mine. Not the wedding itself. I never obsessed over floral arrangements or choreographed dances. The one thing I'd held on to, the dream I'd cherished since I was 6, was my dad walking me down the aisle. He promised me once after I tripped on stage at a school play wearing a paper crown. I'd been sobbing, unable to catch my breath, and he'd scooped me up, kissed my forehead, and whispered, "One day, my little star, I'll walk you down the aisle, and the whole world will see how proud I am to be your dad." That was the promise I clung to. A buzz from my phone shattered the quiet. The screen lit up on the vanity. A text from him. "Can I see you before it starts?" My stomach did. A somersault. For a fleeting moment, I was a little girl again, full of hope, willing to forgive anything just to have him by my side. I slipped out of the room, telling my maid of honor, Maya, I'd be right back. She was deep in organizing the processional, music, and just flashed a thumbs up. The corridor was filled with the scent of lilies and lemon polish. I found him waiting by the side entrance, near the heavy oak doors that always groaned when they moved. His back was to me, wearing the same dark gray suit from Isla's wedding, though his tie was different. "Dad?" He turned, but he didn't smile. His eyes avoided mine. "Hey," he mumbled. "Is something wrong?" I asked, scanning his face for an answer. That's when I saw it. Her car. Serafina's absurdly large white SUV, parked crookedly over 2 spots in the church's lot as if it owned the ground beneath it. She wasn't supposed to be here. She declined the invitation, claiming a charity event in the city. He followed. My gaze. She just stopped by for a minute. She wanted to speak with me. I said nothing, just waited. "She believes that me walking you down the aisle would be a slight to her," he finally managed to say. A bewildered laugh escaped me. "To her? This is my wedding. It has nothing to do with her. She said it makes her feel disrespected. Like your wedding is outshining Isla's. Like I'm choosing a side." "Dad," I said, my voice slow and deliberate. "This isn't a contest. I am your daughter. You promised me." He rubbed the back of his neck, his gaze fixed on the floor. "She said it would devastate her to see me up there, that I'm making her feel secondary, that it opens old wounds." "What? About my wounds?" I shot back. "What about every holiday I sat by while you celebrated her? Every birthday you forgot? Every time you called her your princess and I was just there? I kept my peace for years, but I thought for once, just this once, you would be here for me." He winced and took a shaky breath. "Please, Alara, don't make me choose." That single sentence fractured something inside me. Because the truth was, he already had. "So, I won't choose," he sighed. Then he stepped past me. No hug, no apology, just the faint smell of aftershave and silence. "I'm leaving," he said over his shoulder. And then he was gone, the oak doors shutting behind him with that familiar creak. For a long moment, I just stood there. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood in that hallway, watching dust motes dance in the sunlight filtering through the stained glass. After a while, I turned and walked back to the bridal suite. Maya looked up. "You okay?" I nodded. It wasn't a lie. I was functioning. That had to be enough. She returned to her playlist. I walked to the mirror and picked up my veil. My hands were steady this time. I clipped it into my hair myself. No one else was going to do it for me. I looked at myself, really looked. This wasn't about Serafina. Not truly. It wasn't even about a wedding. It was about how small I had always been forced to be, and how no one, not even my own father, had ever defended my right to take up space. The music began, a soft knock on the door. "It's time," a voice said. The doors opened. The guests stood. There was no one at my side, no hand on my arm, no whispered words of encouragement. But I drew a deep breath, lifted my chin, and took a step forward. Alone. I didn't falter, didn't look back, didn't let my lips tremble as I walked down that aisle with no one beside me. But a dull ache settled deep in my chest, heavy as a stone. By the time I reached the altar, smiled at the officiant, and stood beside the man who had actually chosen me, my legs were numb. After the vows, the kiss, and the gentle applause, my new husband squeezed my hand, a silent promise. Then came the reception. We walked into the ballroom together, but I felt like I was floating through it, detached and alone. The decor was elegant. The lighting was warm, the chandeliers glistened, but it didn't feel like my celebration. I sat at the head table and scanned the room. The centerpieces were almost exact replicas of those at Isla's wedding 6 months earlier, long-stemmed white lilies in frosted vases with floating candles. The band was the same jazz trio she had hired. Even the soft amber lighting was a perfect match. This wasn't a coincidence, it was a statement. The florist walked past me, making a small adjustment to a bouquet. She smiled quickly and said, "It's funny, Serafina asked us to keep it understated this time. Said she didn't want anything to seem too grand compared to your sister's wedding." I blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" But she was already gone. A few minutes later, a young catering assistant approached with a pitcher of sparkling water. She hesitated, glancing at my place setting, then whispered, "We were instructed to replicate several elements from the Isla event, specifically the table arrangements. A family member requested it. It wasn't me." I looked across the room and saw her, my stepmother Serafina, hovering by the cake table, whispering to Isla with that tight, proprietary smile she always wore. Isla's wedding had been a massive, lavish affair. At her wedding, I was seated behind a marble column that blocked my entire view of the ceremony. I wasn't asked to help plan, nor was I invited to give a toast. Serafina had told me bluntly, "You're not the kind of daughter I want in the front row." She'd said it while fluffing Isla's veil, as if I were nothing more than annoying background static. And my father? He just straightened his tie and checked his watch. Now, here I was, the bride, still seated behind a pillar of a different sort. The DJ made an announcement for the mother-son dance. People applauded as Liam sweetly led his mother to the floor. Their dance was lovely and light. Then the music faded and someone shouted, "What about the father-daughter dance?" An awkward silence fell. The DJ cleared his throat. "We'll be moving straight into dinner service." No one questioned it, but I saw the confused looks from Liam's family. The slight frown on his aunt's face, the way his grandfather leaned in to whisper to his wife, who glanced at me with pity before quickly looking away. Isla and Serafina chose that moment to approach our table. They never missed an opportunity to strike when the air was already tense. "Ilara," Isla said, her smile too forced to be genuine. "You look so understated, elegant," Serafina added with a light laugh, sipping her champagne. "A second wedding should always be more modest." I placed my fork down, refusing to flinch, refusing to take the bait. But my grip on my water glass tightened. "Excuse me," I said, my voice perfectly level. I stood up. Liam looked at me, his eyes full of concern. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," I replied with a strained smile. But I was far from fine. I had spent A lifetime believing that if I made myself small enough, quiet enough, they would finally deem me worthy. If I didn't demand too much or shine too brightly, they would grant me a place at their table. Yet here I was, in a dress I'd chosen, at a wedding that was supposed to be mine, and I was still invisible. I left the ballroom and stepped into the courtyard, my heels clicking on the cobblestones like a frantic heartbeat I could suddenly hear, clearly. The evening air was cool. A breeze rustled the edge of my veil, which was still pinned in my hair. I pulled out my phone and stared at the screen. A name I hadn't touched in years sat at the top of my contacts. I hesitated, then pressed call. The phone rang once, twice, then a soft, hesitant voice answered. Hello? The woman on the other end hadn't heard from me in years, because I was told she had abandoned me. I didn't think you'd ever call, Aunt Clara said, her voice cracking. I could hear the years of held-back emotion in her words. It's me, I said, sinking onto the edge of a fountain outside the ballroom, my wedding dress pooling around me. There was a beat of silence, then she whispered, Alara? I nodded, though she couldn't see me. Can I see you? Of course, she answered instantly. Always. Where are you? I looked back at the glowing venue, my name on the welcome sign out front. At the Wyndham downtown, room 310. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The line went dead, but a door had opened inside me. I headed back to the suite, walking past clusters of guests who barely registered my absence. The bridal suite was quiet. Liam had taken off his shoes and was half asleep on the sofa. He glanced up, saw the unresolved tension in my face, and just gave me a gentle nod, giving me the space I needed. I unzipped my dress in front of the mirror. My skin felt raw, as if I'd been holding my breath all day. As the dress fell away, I finally exhaled. I sat on the floor in my slip and pulled open the bottom drawer of an old vanity. That's when I saw it. A photograph, wedged under some dust covers, curled at the edges. My 5th birthday. A homemade cake with lopsided candles. My father standing behind me, beaming. Just the two of us. Before Serafina. Before everything got complicated. I clutched the photo to my chest, and the memories flooded in. The middle school awards ceremony where I'd practiced my speech for weeks, my eyes darting to the door, praying they'd show up. They never did. The excuse later was that Serafina's tennis match ran long. Then, high school graduation. My father sat through the opening remarks, but then his phone buzzed. He leaned over and whispered, Isla's pageant is starting. I'm so proud of you. And then he left. I watched him go as I waited for my name to be called. College was meant to be a new start. I graduated with honors, but they scheduled Isla's engagement party on the same day as my commencement. We'll celebrate later, Dad texted. Later never arrived. I remember tossing my graduation cap into the back seat of my car that night. The Outshine. Silence in the car louder than the applause in the stadium had been. Sitting there on the floor, I finally allowed the grief to wash over me. Not just from today, but from all the days that came before. All the small moments of neglect, the empty seats, the pride that was always reserved for someone else. I whispered to the empty room, at some point, you have to stop saving a seat. For someone who never shows up. You just have to erase it. A knock at the door startled me. Aunt Clara. I slipped on a robe and opened it. But it was just housekeeping. I waved them away, closed the door, and walked to a closet. At the very back was a white shoebox taped shut. That box hadn't been opened in over a decade, but I knew exactly what it held. I sat on the floor with the open shoebox before me. Inside were a pair of tiny white satin ballet slippers, now yellowed with age. Beside them was a folded piece of paper with a child's crayon drawing. I carefully lifted the paper. It was a picture of a little girl in a white dress holding hands with a tall man in a suit. I had titled it, Me and Daddy's Wedding, in pink crayon, with hearts all around it. Tucked underneath the drawing was a small card with his bold handwriting. One day, I'll walk you down the aisle in these. I didn't cry. I just stared at the words, written by a man who used to see me, who used to love me. I was 8 when he made that promise. We had danced around the kitchen, my feet slipping inside. The 2 big shoes, my mother smiling in the doorway. That was before Serafina. Before I became an afterthought in my own life. The shoes had been waiting just like I had. Every holiday, every birthday, I had saved a space for him, a seat at the table, a spot in my heart. But he never filled it. As I sat there, the ache in my chest returned, a slow, spreading cold. He didn't forget his promise. He chose not to remember it. There's a profound difference. One is a human failing. The other is a deliberate act of erasure. I could no longer pretend that Serafina had simply pulled him away. He had let her erase me piece by piece, day by day. The ink on the note hadn't faded, but the man behind the words had. My hands trembled. My heart didn't feel broken. It felt exhausted. Tonight, it was finally setting the weight down. You kept this promise, Alara, I whispered to myself. He didn't. It was a quiet moment of clarity. I placed the shoes and the note back in the box, not as a wound, but as a record of a truth that could no longer be denied. As I slid the box back into the closet, my phone buzzed. And then again. It was an unknown number. A single image. I opened it. It was a candid photo from the reception. Serafina had her arm around Isla, both of them beaming. Behind them, my father stood slightly apart, raising a glass and a toast. The caption read, "At least she got a real daughter moment." I didn't flinch. I knew exactly who sent it. And this time, I was ready. I didn't delete the photo. I let the screen's glow burn into my retinas. The photo was sharp. Isla in her gown, laughing beside my stepmother. Between them, an envelope was being passed from Serafina's hand to Isla's. On it, in elegant script, it said, "From Dad." I zoomed in. Just under the seal, a slip of paper was visible. I sharpened the image. I could just make out a Wells Fargo bank logo and a transaction ID. Stamped at the bottom was the date. 3 days before my final venue payment was declined. 3 days before my wedding plans imploded. I sat up, my breath catching in my throat. I logged into my old email account. Search. Wedding invoice. There it was. I clicked on the thread from the venue coordinator. A single line stood out. Venue rental, final payment. Due, $18,000. Below it, in my own notes, Dad said he would cover this. I remembered his words on the phone. "Don't worry about it, sweetheart. I've already handled it." But it was never paid, not $1. The slow ache in my chest hardened. This wasn't just neglect, it was a quiet, calculated betrayal. So that's what he meant by handled, I whispered to the dark. I looked at the messages again. More photos. Serafina and Isla toasting with champagne, my father smiling in the background, his hand on Serafina's back. A perfect family portrait, with me cut out of the frame. The pain stiffened into rage. This wasn't just favoritism. This was theft disguised as parental love. He hadn't just forgotten me, he had rerouted my life to pave their perfect road. My phone buzzed again. An old text from Isla sent a week before her wedding. "Hey, just curious, are you still using that same venue? I heard they were overbooked." At the time, I thought nothing of it. Now it reeked of smug insider knowledge. They all knew. She knew my venue was about to fall through, and she said nothing. They made me feel like a guest at my own life. That was it, the turning point. No more hurt, no more hope, just clarity. They would never admit what they did. But I didn't need their confession. I had receipts. And I was done being quiet. I opened my laptop, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I typed, "Family Trust Document Access Attorney Login." A prompt appeared. "Are you the primary beneficiary?" I stared at it, then clicked, "Yes," and held my breath. The screen blinked, and then it opened. A list of neatly labeled folders appeared. I clicked on the one that made my stomach drop. Living Trust, Revised. The folder unzipped into a timeline of revisions. I opened the oldest file from 2018. My name was there, clear as day. Property at 134 Birch Grove Lane allocated to Alara Marie. That wasn't just a house. It was my childhood home. The home I tiled the kitchen in with my dad. The home whose roof I helped repair because he told me, "This place will be yours one day. Might as well learn to take care of it." Then I opened the next file, revised in 2021. The words blurred. Transferred to Isla Lynn and spouse per family reallocation. They had erased me. That was my inheritance, my sweat, my memories. And Isla? She once called that house too far from a decent brunch. Sunlight began to filter through the blinds. It was 6:30 a.m. I hadn't slept. I sat there as the sky turned a soft dawn blue, the storm inside me finally breaking. I traced the timeline. In 2018, Dad and I were close. In 2020, I moved in for 3 months to care for him after his hip surgery. Then, sometime after Isla got engaged, it all changed. Fewer calls, less eye contact. Serafina started making comments. Like, "You wouldn't want to deal with an old house, would you?" Lies wrapped in polite concern. A sick realization curled in my gut. This wasn't neglect, it was theft. "They didn't just choose her," I whispered, my voice shaking. "They took from me to give to her." That sentence echoed in the silent room. This was betrayal with receipts. My hand was steady as I reached for my phone. I searched for estate attorneys in a different city, away from anyone in my father's circle. "Good morning, Reed and Associates," a brisk voice answered. I cleared my throat. "My name is Ilara Marie. I have a revised family trust file and copies of the original. I believe there has been an inheritance misallocation, and I'd like to make it right." There was a pause. "We can schedule an immediate consultation," the voice replied, suddenly more formal. I hung up, took a deep breath, and emailed the files. As I hit send, I felt no guilt, no anger, just precision. They had tried to write me out, but I was about to write myself back in. The next morning, I parked in front of a modest downtown building, Reed and Associates, Estate Law. Inside, the office was quiet. Attorney Reed, a man with kind eyes and wire-rimmed glasses, gestured for me to sit. "I need to know what happened," I said, placing the printouts on his desk. He skimmed the pages. "You're not wrong," he said, then turned to his computer. After a moment, he swiveled the screen toward me. An email chain. Subject: Living Trust Reallocation, Birch Grove Property. The sender was my father. The date was March 12, 2021. Please proceed with reallocating the property to Isla Lynn and fiancé. Do not inform Ilara unless she asks directly. 3 weeks before Isla's bridal shower. While I was picking out flowers for her, he was erasing me. Reed clicked again, revealing a scanned, handwritten note from my father to the trustee. "She's strong. She'll understand. I need this to go smoothly with Isla's in-laws." Strong, he had used my strength against me as an excuse to abandon me. "Is this legal?" I asked, my voice flat. "Legal, yes," Reed said with a quiet sigh. "Ethical? Highly questionable. But if you're willing to fight, we can bring this to light." I looked out the window. The world outside was unchanged, but mine had been shattered. "My name wasn't just removed from a document," I said finally. "It was erased from a family." I leaned forward. "Then we fight." As I was leaving his office, my phone buzzed. A text from my father. "I heard you went digging. Please don't ruin things." No apology, just another demand for my silence. I didn't reply. I forwarded the message straight to my lawyer and kept walking. Instead of going home, I drove to Aunt Clara's. The porch light cast a warm golden glow on her small house. She opened the door before I even knocked. "I was wondering when you'd show up," she said, pulling me into a hug. Inside, it smelled of cinnamon and wood polish. She handed me a cup of tea, just the way I like it. We sat in silence for a while. "Did I do something?" I finally asked, my voice small. "To deserve this?" "Oh, sweetheart," she said softly. "You've done nothing to deserve any of it." She paused. "Serafina never hated you for who you are. She hated you for who your mother was." She retrieved a packet of photocopied papers. "Your mom left behind a deed," she said, handing it to me. She had the house partially transferred into your name before she died. It was never publicly filed, but your father knew. And so did Serafina. I stared at the document. My name was there, Alara Ray. Because, Clara explained, it meant your mother still had a presence, a claim. Your stepmother couldn't stand being second, not emotionally, and not financially. Vera wasn't just the favorite, she was the replacement. My hands trembled. He let her do it. He signed it all away. Before your mom passed, Clara said, handing me a folded yellowed letter. She wrote this for me. My throat tightened as I read my mother's words. If I'm not around, please remind my daughter. She was always meant to stand on her own, but never alone. Tears blurred the ink. All these years, I thought I was the problem. But my mother knew. She knew. You might want to check the county registry tomorrow, Clara said as I left. Some things haven't been fully transferred yet. And when I did check, I saw something that made my hands go cold. I was at the county clerk's office when it opened. I asked for the deed records for 1473 Ashwood Lane. The clerk frowned at her screen. There's a trust file here, but the property's ownership was never fully reassigned. A transfer was initiated but not completed. According to our system, the property is still co-held by an Alara Ray. The air left my lungs. I called my lawyer. David, I said, they never transferred the house, did they? They assumed. He replied, but they didn't file. You still have every right. We can freeze any attempt to sell. By 4:00 p.m., the injunction was filed. By 5:30 p.m., I was standing on the lawn I used to mow as a child, flanked by my lawyer and a county officer. Rang the bell. It wasn't Isla who answered, but my stepmother. Her eyes went from wary to brittle when she saw me. I'm not interested in whatever you're selling. I'm not selling, I said calmly. I'm returning. I handed her a copy of the injunction. I was written out of the story. I'm just rewriting the last chapter. My father appeared in the hallway behind her, silent as always. He just blinked, the weight of the moment finally crashing down on him. I looked at him. You didn't walk me down the aisle, I said, so don't expect me to stand at your doorstep. And I walked past both of them. I went into what used to be my bedroom. The furniture was different, but the windows still faced the same patch of sky. I touched the cool glass, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like an outsider. I felt like the one who had survived the storm. I pulled out my phone. Hi, this is Alara Ray, I told the realtor. Yes, I'm ready. Go ahead and list the property. There was a pause on the other end. No, I said. I'm not keeping it. I'm just closing the chapter. That night, driving away as the last light faded from the sky, I didn't feel victorious. I felt whole. There's a unique pain to family rejection, especially when it's quiet and disguised as love. It's not the initial blow that does the most damage. It's the echo, the years you spend pretending you don't hear it ringing in your ears. But I've learned that while blood may connect you, it's dignity that keeps you intact. Do you think I was right to walk away and never look back? Or should I have tried to salvage what was left? Let me know what you think in the comments, and if this story connected with you, please consider liking and subscribing.